Now, getting back to where I started speaking, that doesn't take away from the exclusive nature of the gospel, where Jesus is saying, access to God is through me and me alone. Number one, you could say, or you could make the argument that he never said that. You could make the argument that along with a lot of things that are quoted in the Bible, that these are products of people with a particular ideology, and that they chose to record things before, during, and after the life of Jesus to promote their particular mindset. In fact, people look at the writers of the Gospels as having their differences, and that's why they retell stories and parables in ways that are unique to their particular strain of belief. So there's always that argument, and for that I respect it. And in some cases I adhere to it myself. But in this particular case, I think it's more likely that Jesus would say something like, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Which, by the way, is language he borrowed from Taoism, which occurred 500 years before he said that. So in Taoism, there's this saying that the Tao is the way, the truth, and the life, meaning there is this ultimate way of living that is preeminent, that is the enlightened path, and that the more you talk about it, the less you're describing what it is. So it's like the way is inexpressible, but one of the ways it was attempted to be expressed was saying that if you found it, it was the ultimate way, the truth of truths, and is life itself. And so I think it's interesting that Jesus would use that language in referring to himself, instead of saying, I too have discovered the way, the truth, and the life, or I too have discovered a way of truth and life, or something like that. But instead it's very specifically personalizes it, saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And several other verses, point to his ascendancy, centrality, eternal magnetism, for lack of a better phrase, but that he was sent and chosen to, be that one acceptable sacrifice for the entire world, in being raised from the dead, is now in a position to empower people who accept him for who he is to be equally gifted as a healer, as someone who thinks with the mind of God, as someone who loves with the heart of God, as someone who is capable of creating supernatural events by becoming aligned with perfect divinity. So yeah, there's a lot there that points to the centrality of the person of Jesus, more so than Buddhism does, or even Islam does, or Judaism. You have to recognize in the tradition of Christianity, there is in it a what's the word I'm looking for? Unquestionable exclusivity that's created by the person of Jesus, and creating a connection with the person of Jesus to have access to this unlimited divine power. Now, having said that, I think we do a great disservice to each other if you're a Christian and just look at Buddhism as evil, Taoism is evil. If Jesus is the ultimate way, then of course Buddhism must be evil. Hinduism must be evil. Anything that isn't Christian must be evil. But the problem with that is, what about differences of Christianity? I think we could probably point to a lot of problems in the Catholic tradition, given that in the past 20, 30 years there's been such a movement away from transparency, and cases of child abuse and pedophilia are just covered up, and perpetrators have just been reassigned to different districts instead of being defrocked, losing their place as priests, and being excommunicated, or whatever it is the Catholic Church needs to do to bring some justice to the victimizing of these tender, innocent boys, mostly. And even the current unprecedented stepping down of the Pope is related to this lack of vulnerability and transparency, that, oh no, we couldn't possibly admit to these heinous crimes, because then people would, what, give us less money? What's to be lost? What's to be lost in being completely honest about the horrific abuse that has occurred for generations at the hands of people of sacred authority, abusing that and victimizing and traumatizing young boys for the rest of their life? If anything, in the true spirit of the life of Jesus, there would be forgiveness and a call for complete honesty to move on with their life, and to be an example of leadership that is honest to say, yes, I did these horrible things to these boys, and yes, I do not deserve to be a priest anymore, and yes, I deserve to go to jail for rape. And then in time, if 20 years in jail, 30 years in jail, whatever it might be, someone learns, true redemption and true repentance and growing, and then somebody somewhere wants to welcome this person as a changed individual into their community in some aspect of leadership, and that's between that community and that person. But to not address these heinous crimes is a joke. And so my point is, when you say, well, only Christians have special favor with God, or have only Christians have a connection with God, and that everything else that isn't Christian is misinformed or evil, means you have an idea of what it means to be Christian. And so are you saying then Catholics aren't Christians? Or are you saying anyone who commits heinous crimes isn't a Christian? Or is it someone who commits heinous crimes and repents and changes their life, now they can be a Christian? You see what I'm saying? You're creating all kinds of stipulations and a threshold that has to be met for someone to be acceptable in your mind as to what a true Christian is. And then what I would say is, aren't you then judging others when the words of Jesus say not to judge others? That we're not in a position to judge them. We to say,